Welcome to this explainer. For thousands of years, the outcome of a battle basically came down to a few things: numbers, courage, terrain, and the element of surprise. A general who knew exactly where the enemy was hiding, they almost always won. But today, we're unpacking something that completely changes the game. We're looking at how artificial intelligence is fundamentally transforming the speed, the cost, and the ethics of modern warfare. We are irreversibly moving away from human speed decisions to machine speed actions, literally rewriting the rules of battle in real time. To really wrap our heads around the massive scale of this paradigm shift, just consider this one, honestly, terrifying number. In conventional warfare, locating a specific enemy position and actually acting on it used to take days of careful reconnaissance. Today, thanks to AI-assisted targeting, the time it now takes to identify and strike a battlefield target has plummeted from days to under 10 minutes. Let's put this in perspective. The old way of finding the enemy meant sending out highly vulnerable human scouts and aircraft and then waiting days for intelligence that was usually outdated by the time you got it. Now, contrast that with a new reality: AI-powered intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. This modern approach instantaneously crunches massive amounts of data from satellites, thermal sensors, and ground radar. It literally cuts the intelligence pipeline from days down to just a few seconds. So, where did this all really kick into high gear? Well, the catalyst was the U.S. Department of Defense's Project Maven back in 2017. The military was facing a huge bottleneck. Their drones were recording thousands of hours of video, way more than human analysts could ever realistically watch. So they applied computer vision. It's the exact same tech behind self-driving cars, but used here to automatically classify military targets. Operationally, it was a massive success, but it also sparked some really significant ethical protests among tech workers in Silicon Valley, who seriously questioned whether AI should be deciding what counts as a target. And all of this feeds into a fascinating concept called multi-source fusion. Think of it like a giant puzzle. Separately, a satellite image of a truck, a radio signal picked up by a drone, and maybe a civilian's social media post about a generator sound, they don't mean much on their own. But AI combines these isolated data points instantly. It fuses them together to pinpoint an enemy position and spits out a high-confidence probability assessment in seconds. The days when an army could simply hide, those are pretty much over. This is where it gets very real for the soldier on the ground. Systems like Palantir's Titan completely bypass those traditional 40-person intelligence analyst teams of the past. Instead, they connect straight to a network of sensors, process the live feeds through AI, and deliver targeting coordinates directly to a single soldier's tablet. Part 1. The Drone and Swarm Revolution. Asymmetric warfare at machine speed. Right now, we're witnessing an unbelievable economic mismatch on the battlefield. Look at the conflict in Ukraine, for example. You have a traditional Russian T-72 tank, which costs roughly $2.5 million. Up against it, a modified commercial drone, literally the kind you can just buy online, costing less than $1,000. For the first time ever, a massively cheaper force can achieve battlefield intelligence and strike capabilities that rival billion-dollar military programs. But hold on, because the game completely changes when you slap AI onto these cheap drones. They gain some truly terrifying new capabilities. For starters, they don't even need a human to spot a tank anymore. They use autonomous target identification. If the enemy jams the GPS signals, no problem. The drones just use visual odometry, basically using their own cameras to read the ground passing below them to navigate without GPS. They could loiter in the air for hours waiting for a target, and most amazingly, they could communicate with each other to coordinate in massive swarms. We aren't just talking about individual drones anymore. It's networked intelligence now, and the major powers are pouring money into this. The U.S. DARPA Offset program has successfully tested swarms of over 250 small drones coordinating in highly complex urban environments. Meanwhile, China's military has actually conducted demonstrations of synchronized swarms utilizing over 1,000 drones. This multi-agent coordination is absolutely at the cutting edge of military research right now. So what does this actually look like in practice? Let's look at a case study from the front lines in Ukraine. The entire process, a reconnaissance drone spotting a target, an AI classifying the vehicles, the coordinates being forwarded to an artillery commander's tablet, and the authorization of a strike. All of that takes less than 8 minutes from start to finish. It's a completely unprecedented shift in what a small unit of soldiers can pull off. Part 2. The global AI arms race. Systems, companies, and superpowers. When we look at the major players globally, it's fascinating because everyone has their own unique playbook. The United States leans heavily on its private defense tech ecosystem to build out a highly networked battlefield. China takes a different route with a civil-military fusion policy, actively integrating commercial tech giants into their military development. Meanwhile, players like Russia, Israel, and Turkey are busy developing and deploying their own highly specialized autonomous systems. Drilling down into the US strategy for a second, defense AI relies incredibly heavily on private companies, names like Palantir, Shield AI, and Anduril. These companies are building autonomous systems specifically designed to plug into what the Pentagon calls JADC2, or the Joint All-Domain Command and Control Architecture. The ultimate vision here is huge, a fully networked battlefield where AI connects every single sensor, shooter, and commander globally into one coherent picture. But hey, it's definitely not just the big superpowers running the show. Smaller players are aggressively tipping the scales here. Russia is pushing forward with systems like the Uran-9 unmanned ground vehicle. Israel continues to refine its heavily battle-tested automated defense and anti-radar drones. And Turkey's Bayraktar TB2 drone has basically proven to the world that AI-assisted target tracking can be incredibly effective and highly budget-friendly.
Part 3. The ethical dilemma. The algorithm's choice.
For as long as we've had international humanitarian law, the actual laws of armed conflict, they've always required a human conscience. Before any lethal attack, a human being has to sit down and make moral calculations. They have to ask, is this target a legitimate military objective? Is the anticipated harm proportionate? We've always just naturally assumed that these kinds of heavy judgment calls required a human mind. But because everything is moving so incredibly fast now, military doctrine is going through a dangerous shift. We used to insist strictly on a human in the loop, meaning a soldier absolutely had to manually authorize every single strike. But as combat speeds increase, we're shifting toward a human on the loop. This means the AI system makes the decision, and a human operator only gets a few seconds to veto or override it before the machine takes lethal action. And honestly, it goes even further than that. Take modern AI-driven loitering munitions, what are commonly known as kamikaze drones, like the Shahid or Lancet. Once that weapon is launched, the human loop is effectively completely removed. The drone just flies, searches, decides, and strikes entirely on its own, based solely on its programmed parameters. This reality brings us to a massive unresolved clash. On one side, you have legal scholars warning that delegating legal decisions to algorithms is a direct, flat-out violation of the Geneva Conventions. But on the other side, military planners argue that in a future conflict where decisions happen in literal milliseconds, a slow, biological human simply cannot function or survive in an AI-speed conflict. And both sides are fiercely defending their positions. Plus, we really can't forget the limitations of the tech itself. AI systems are not perfect. Far from it. They are trained on massive data sets, and that data contains inherent biases. Early military AI systems actually have a pretty well-documented history of false positives, doing things like misclassifying civilian trucks as military logistics vehicles or tragically misidentifying civilians as valid targets. At the end of the day, the algorithm is only as good as the data it learns from. Which brings us to one final, incredibly haunting reality. As the economics of cheap drones and the sheer blinding speed of multi-source fusion push warfare irreversibly toward machine speed, the human element is literally being squeezed out of the decision-making process. So, as you reflect on everything we've covered in this explainer, you are left to ponder what might be the ultimate question for the future of humanity. Should machines choose who dies?